that far. I just, I don't think anything that questions the reality. See, it's like you can't question your reality. If you thought that your reality was questionable, is this lady really here, right? If I had to question whether my perception of this lady being here was actual or not, you'd be crazy. So the brain cannot not assume that its reality is solid. And the image is part of that. So to question the reality of that image is to question the integrity of the whole show. And that's why it's defended against.
So this reminds me of paying no attention to the man behind
The curtain, yeah.
the Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz, right.
And Toto goes behind the
Pay no attention to the guy behind the curtain. I think it's just such a sweet deal. I mean, that's really what it is.
So the freak out moment, when you somehow get a hint that it's an illusion, is it possible that Alzheimer's and senility are stages or things that we go into because we can't trust that what we've always thought was real isn't?
I don't know enough about it to comment. My hunch is that there's a dismantling of the myelin and so on and so forth, so it's very confusing. I think I would use
Well, we
confusion.
can find physical evidence of it, but there's, as we are human beings, we're multi-layered, and while there may be physical evidence of it, there is probably, I'm beginning to question if there's a deeper identity crisis behind it.
I would assume that confusion would roll into identity, right? Yes, there would be confusion. And again, I don't know enough about it to even comment. But I would like to just move into identity, because I think identity, we talk about self-image, and we can kind of handle that as we've got an image of ourselves and kind of but our identity seems to need to be deeper. Identity. And reality, so reality and identity to me seem equal, right? My identity is my reality. Now, when Kay says, be a light to yourself, or see that the image is just the image, what I think he's inviting you to do is literally enter into a different reality. You are no longer subject to relating to the other person's image. The other person's image is just an image, and it's not the guy behind. Pay no attention to the guy behind the curtain. Just forget about the guy behind the curtain. That's a reality. To believe that Oz is the great Oz is a reality. To see through the magician's trick literally implies a different reality. The rope is not the snake is a different reality. And your identity changes with one's reality. If you enter into a different reality, your identity changes. So I'm suggesting that you can read Kay and look at his stuff, and you can stay in this reality and not have any identity shift go on whatsoever, right? But I'm going to just throw out that to embody what he's talking about would be to let go of a particular reality and actually embody a different reality. And you would no longer go back. How could he go back? Once he saw that the rope was not a snake, he couldn't go back. He wasn't courageous. He wasn't, fighting the thing. He was just calling the show what it is. He had no choice but to simply express the reality that was his. And he invited us to do the same thing, which means we would take on a new identity. We would no longer relate to the world through our self-image, but we would relate to it with something else, which I would say is bigger, more authentic, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a shift, it's not a little shift, it's a big shift. It's a shift of reality identity. To actually see, you know, to follow Kay's invitation and embody what he's talking about is really to see literally that the rope is not a snake. To see that what we used to think was one way is no longer. We see through the trick that the brain is playing on ourselves. We see it, that this is just an image. And wow, we are then free to dance as though nobody was watching, or sing in the shower, or do whatever. We were free from embarrassment, right? We're going to be free from the limitations and constraints that enculturated fear reflex that started at 18 months has now blossomed into this big elephant in our room. Sir?
Well, as you're talking, is it where Kay is getting at the idea of the world is you and you are the world? And
Sorry, what?
the world is you and you are the world. It's sort of limitless appreciation and love rather than, I mean, if you have this image you're hanging on to for dear life and you're concerned about all these outside things and people, then you really can't. It's hard to appreciate. I was thinking as you were talking, what's going through the mind of someone who's in a life drawing class, you know, and they're just exercising their capacity to appreciate or enjoy this image of whoever it is that they're drawing. It seems that this, I mean, it's a very, we all have different things we've done in our lives, and we have an image of ourselves as a nurse or this or that. And my own thing as an architect, they have terrible image stuff. And that seems to have to be given up.
Two quick things, just because you fed me these little buzzwords. First of all, in states of complete attention, when you're giving complete attention to something, again, it's in the play, it's in the flow, it's in the zone. When you're giving complete attention, there is no image. That image, there is no image. It's not there. You can do the math. If you give 100% attention to what you're doing, how much attention do you have left over to create an image?
Or to self-reflect.
Or to self-reflect. You're just hitting the ball, or petting the cat, or dancing. It's not there. There is no image. The other thing has to do with the 100% of attention. We don't give all of it. He said a million times. The image is only there when there's inattention. Right? I mean, this is so simple. Right? So when attention goes down, right, sinks into the reflex system, it just kind of makes up all this stuff, and we're looking at all these images that the brain's farting, right? And that's all it is, and we're saying, wow, that was really, and that's basically what it is. But in moments of complete attention, when that passion is there, and I think that his encouragement was that we gather our energy and attention to be more, to bring a little bit more juice to the moment, so that we're not completely submerged in what David Bohm called the reflex system. And to that degree that we have more energy than the reflex system is occupying, then we can, on that thin layer that rises above the pond of the reflex system, we can see something new. Now you said something else, we are the world. Again, he qualified this. I think there's great misunderstanding about the we are the world thing. I just edited a piece, and I don't know how to share it with you. I'm happy to share it with you. Alan Naday was Kay's secretary in the 60s, and he conducted a series of interviews with Kay in Malibu in the early 70s. And I went and met Alan in Baltimore not too long ago, and we had a wonderful time. Then I found out that these talks were available, and I listened to one of them. And well, I listened to all of them, but the first one was stunning. I mean, I'm not easily impressed because I've read a lot of this stuff, but this was stunning. And he and Alan, Kay and Alan, because they've known each other and were such good friends, they just surfed really fast and deep and went right to the heart of the observer and the observed, and you are the world. I mean, he really touched on a half a dozen of these core Krishnamurti things. And as a filmmaker, I've been ruthlessly editing all this stuff for years. Everybody else says, no, you can't edit anything. I have to go in with my scissors and chop it all up and make it tight and so on. And so I did that. I tightened it all up and took 8 or 20 pages down to 8 or something like that. Really distilled it and really kind of focused in on it. And one of the points, I don't know how to do it, but I'll be happy to make it available or post it or have the foundation put it up someplace where you can get it. It's really good. I titled it Start Here. You know, like a little quick start that you get when you get a new camera or something, a little VCR. It says here, here's the quick start. Well, this was my quick start for Krishnamurti. If you get this, now you can go and read the instruction book. But read this first, and if you get it, it's going to change everything. So that is available. But You Are the World was something they dealt with. And he said, you're not the tree. When he says you are the world, he's not saying you're the tree. You're not the rocks. What he was really talking about was that all humanity shares a common reality. We have a common structure. We have a common brain. My sorrow is no different than your sorrow. As sorrow. Sorrow is sorrow. Now we can idealize it or personalize it and say this is my sorrow, but he's saying no, it's common to the whole. So we are one as a species. All of our senses and experiences and all the realities that we have are common. We are brothers. We are sisters. We're all, that's what he meant, I think. And he qualified it. He says, you're not the tree. Well, so when he says you are the world, he's not meaning that you're the ocean. I mean, we could go there, but I think what he's really saying is that as a brotherhood of species, we are all one. We all share the same structure, the same perceptions, the same realities, the same hardships, and so on. I think that's what he meant when he said you are the world. Anything else? I don't even know what our time is. Do we have? Sorry? Any other questions? We got a few minutes.
I highly recommend Krishnamurti's books on meditation. It's taking us totally away from the self or the ego or whatever that is. It seems to just take us completely, or take me completely away from all of the other things that I think I do, and just into a very beautiful place.
I would like to suggest that all of Krishnamurti's, it doesn't matter to me where you kind of pin the tail on the donkey.
Yes.
I think that all of his works were really talking more about the state of the mind or brain than its content. I don't think that, of course he was talking about content and, the image that I have of you and I hate what you did yesterday and all of that. No, I'm not a jerk, So we can go into content, but he was really using content as a way of really pointing to the state of the brain.
Right.
And I'm going to suggest that this image-making process that the neocortex does is on sometimes, and at other times it's not. Now, that means that the self is there sometimes, and other times it's not. Now, as David said, we assume that once we have assumed that there's this entity in there called the self, we treat it as though it's there. It's a permanent thing. But in this definition of optimum states, when you're giving complete attention, there is no self. So the self is only there sometimes. It's not permanent. Now, if you think that mom's going to come down the room and yell at you for cleaning up your room or not cleaning up your room, the self is there, right? But if you're there building a spaceship to Mars, the self isn't there, right? So the self is not a permanent thing. The self is just there sometimes. And once you realize, once you get a feeling for self, no self, self, no self, self, no self, you can just go to no self. You don't have to turn it back on. It's like a switch. And when you sense it, here it is again, right? I'm here and I may screw up and I'm nervous just like I was in elementary school with my spelling bee. I can create a self and get all nervous. Or I can just say, no, let's redirect that energy and just give 100% of whatever I'm doing to whatever I'm doing and forget the self. I mean, it's just a redirect. When the self shows up again, and it will because it's a reflex, you just redirect it. Push that into meeting the moment or hitting the ball or singing the song or whatever it is that you're doing. You just redirect that misuse of your energy and attention, that reflex. You see it as a ghost, you say, I don't need to do that anymore. And then you just go back like a kid and build your spaceship to Mars.
Sounds like a path to me, Mike.
Isn't that great?
Sounds like a path.
A path.
Just, it seems like the self and suffering are always there together. The higher degree of suffering, the more sense of self, the more defensive and all that.
I think we have a real sense of grief that's visceral, and there is that, and then there's a lot of just whining. Most of what I think our suffering is whining because the me or the image wasn't validated or something, threatened, and she didn't love me, or I don't know what it is. But that's whining in my book. But there's also another thing of this deep. There's a deep thing that's visceral that isn't. It's deeper than whining. So, but I think most of our suffering is whining. But I would say that.
Could I ask Jeff to elaborate on what he said about
Sorry?
Could I ask Jeff to elaborate on what he said about that it sounds like a path?
Oh, he was being.
Would you be willing to?
He was being stupid. No.
You were just describing some path that Craig Kay said, not really heard. When you feel something, do something else. So
That's all right. I'm just telling you what I did as a kid. As soon as the ghost showed up, I said, well, okay, I can either get nervous and stutter, right? Or I can just hit the ball. So that was just what I did.
So Mike,
Yes?
going back to the beginning of the whole conversation, you mentioned Gurdjieff
Yeah.
saying that there's 3 different lines,
3 brains.
3 brains, and then Krishnamurti coming in, and then David Bohm coming in.
Well, I mentioned Gurdjieff as an introduction to Keith Buzzell and him looking at the 3-brain nature. We could go, the prefrontals is also a brain, as distinct, Paul MacLean even go that far. The heart is also a brain. 40% of the heart cells are neurons. Wherever you're going to have neurons, you have what we might call a brain or an image quality. So we've got more. You've got the 3 basics, but you've got the heart and at least the prefrontals as distinct images, distinct orders of images. The images that the heart generates is different from the neocortex, different from the limbic system or the sensory motor brain. All of those are pushing their own kind of image into what we might call consciousness or perception, and often simultaneously. So it's a big mess up there with all of these different kinds of images being produced because we're so complicated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what I'm asking basically is that you're talking about the evolution of millions of years creating these 3 brains. Then Gurdjieff mentions there are. And David is talking pretty close to the illusion. Where do you pin the dogma there?
Well, again, the neocortex is really creating abstractions, symbolic and metaphoric images, right? Thought, language.
Christian Murray makes that very clear, that we think.
Well, I'm just saying that the kind of image that the neocortex produces, and not exclusively, again, it's way more complicated, as I said, this is a comic book, but basically, you think, but your belief systems, right? Your belief systems, your ideologies, your images of, well, he's an important person because he wears a pink star, or whatever it is, right? All of that is a symbolic metaphoric thing, right? And again, Kay just sort of wipes that out. Now you could use symbols and metaphors to change a tire or bake a cake or to do what Bone said, to do a science. But so you can use that. It's a great thing. We don't want to not use it. But we don't want to let it go nuts and then believe in the abstraction and then sort of chase our tail because we now think that we're God or whatever it is. Right? Or a Republican. God forbid. Right? So it's that kind of image that they wanted us to see through and to use properly actually, Einstein's genius was because he brought his playful imagination into higher levels of maturity and he asked wonderful playful questions. And that was fine, but he didn't believe that was, that he was whatever. He didn't create a belief out of it. He just used imagination as a tool. And then he didn't get messed up in it very much. But when we identify with our beliefs, and this is part of the difficulty with identity, is that all of our beliefs get morphed into our identity. So that if you're a Christian and I say Christians are stupid, then you're going to take it personally. Right? So, and this was some of this, why this thing called it's just a mess. I mean, it's just a mess. We don't know. We're like the Sorcerer's Apprentice with this new, very powerful image-making thing called the neocortex. And we don't have, Bone basically said we have not evolved proprioception of the thought process, meaning we don't know what the thought process is doing. It's happening so fast that we can't follow it and we get lost because the image making is so evocative and so powerful that we get lost and we don't know where we are over generations.
One thing that Goethe said that really helped me was that feelings are 30,000 times faster than thoughts. So that was something that for me always gave me sort of like a barometer. But I don't get that barometer from Krishnamurti, but all of his work says it. So maybe that's my question. Is there a barometer here with David?
No, I don't know. I'm not trying to equate. I only brought in Gurdjieff as an introduction to Keith and the three-brain model. I think they had completely different languages and completely different things. They're oil and water. They both have their wonderful qualities. I mean, Keith has studied Gurdjieff for 50 years and just loves the math and loves the whole thing. But he was really just talking about the brain and images, and that was the unique thing, was that brains create images, and that gave me a whole new perspective of the deal. And that the sensory motor images were completely different than the feeling images, which were completely different than those images. And once you get a better handle on the nature of the image-making potential of the brains, then when Kay says truth is a pathless land, truth isn't an image, man, now I get it. It helped me a lot because what's an image? I have a better understanding of what the different images are and how they work and what their functions are, and then you can put them in the right place. You don't get quite as lost. I mean, that's just.
So the last question is very simple. Is there a series when David was speaking there, or is that just one video? What's the name of that?
Well, this was an interview that I did with David. We have put this together as part of what's called the First Generation Collection. We've done over 90 interviews with various people who worked with Kay or knew Kay or experienced him and so on. I just pulled this out because when I sat with David, I said, why is the self so hard to get to? Why is it so elusive? Why is it so difficult? And how does it relate to Kay's teachings? And I felt like, again, what he had to say, I mean, if you really go through the transcript and read each line and think about each line, man, oh man, does it really make sense. He was spot on. So,
is that interview available?
yeah, I have transcripts. I can make it available. So, again, we'll have to figure out a mechanism to do that. It's not proprietary or anything, but it's just, but it's breathtaking.
Could I ask a question? One of the essences, what Kate's been talking about is silence and being nothing. And it isn't that being nothing is nothing, it's something much deeper than that. It's a different state of consciousness or whatever. And I wonder where that comes in.
Well, again, I can only talk about me, but when I hear him saying silence, I don't think he's saying that the limbic system is not operating or the sensory motor brain isn't operating and so on. I think he's meaning that the neocortex is quiet, is switched off, if you will. It's not firing, it's not just barfing up more stuff reflexively. Much of what we do, much of what the neocortex does is it's just a reflexive bubbling up. It happens mechanically. So when that becomes quiet or still or turned off, you basically liberate all of the energy and attention that was going into that. All of the attention that was going into the images that the system was mechanically producing is now available. I was talking with Javier Rodriguez. I was driving with my wife the other day, and it dawned on me that what Kay calls the teachings is kindergarten. It's just the first. It's just a crack in the door. Right? What he's asking us to do is the baby step. It's just kindergarten. To realize that the images that we believe in are just images, and that when the mind becomes silent, attention expands and goes all kinds of places. But where it can go, he said, was limitless. He said it was an explosion. He said it was, something that the brain couldn't understand. So there's something, what he considered almost miraculous, that takes place in that. But it all begins with the crack in the door, which is what he called the teach, what he was pointing to. That, go through the door and then, be still or whatever you want to say. And, who knows? Who knows what would be on the other side of the door? But any speculation that we make about it from this side of the door is obviously nuts. Which is another image, which is all he said. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Was it fun? You smiled. Oh, Alan. I have
Right.